Hi, I just wanted to spend a few moments to review some of the key points and elements of operant conditioning. The chapter on learning talks about classical conditioning and operant conditioning, and it can be a bit confusing because there are a lot of new scientific terms presented. In a nutshell, classical conditioning is going to involve more of a biological or reflexive response to a particular stimulus. In operant conditioning, we have a behavior that occurs first, and that is then followed by a reinforcer or a punisher to determine whether or not, whether that behavior is more likely to occur again or less likely to occur again. Let's walk through some of the key terms and see if we can't clarify some questions for you. First of all, so a behavior will occur. You're going to ask yourself, if you're trying to analyze a situation or a case to determine what kind of conditioning involved or what the elements were involved, ask yourself, is the behavior something that needs to be kept or strengthened, or is the behavior something that needs to be decreased or stopped? If we want to keep the behavior, we're going to want to reinforce it. The term reinforcement means to strengthen something. If in the military forces, if you send in reinforcements, you strengthen your line or you strengthen your position. If you build a reinforcing wall in a house, you strengthen that structure. So reinforcement is a term that's used in our culture that means the same thing. It means to strengthen something. In this case, it's going to strengthen it and increase the likelihood of that behavior occurring again in the future. Now, when Skinner developed this model, he was looking through a scientific lens, and he realized that you could strengthen behavior, you could reinforce the behavior two different ways. You could either reinforce the behavior by adding something good, or you could reinforce behavior by removing something negative or something bad. And what that meant was, so the terms positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement are just different ways of reinforcing. They are mathematical terms. They're not related to quality. Now, unfortunately, our culture uses the term negative reinforcement incorrectly way too often. Oftentimes, people will say negative reinforcement when they mean punishment. But negative reinforcement, if you're wanting to punish somebody, reinforcement doesn't make sense at all. Okay? So negative reinforcement means you're going to strengthen the behavior by removing something bad. Let's go through some examples. Positive reinforcement, if you want to add something good, if you make an A on an exam and your parents will pay you $25 for every A, that's positive reinforcement. Even if you meet somebody and you're trying to decide whether you want to go say hi or strike up a friendly conversation, if they look at you and smile, that's reinforcing behavior and you're likely to pursue that. So we positively reinforce a lot of things in our relationships. And that's what, and that's what we're doing when we're adding something good. When you remove something bad, you're also reinforcing it. So for instance, if an instructor has a policy that if you have a 95% or better, you do not have to take the final. Or if you have a B or better, you don't have to take the final. That's negative reinforcement because you're going to want to not take the final. So therefore, making good grades is going to be reinforced by removing something bad. So you're going to be encouraged, and good grades are going to be reinforced by removing having to take the final. That is negative reinforcement. If I have a headache and I take, let's say I take ibuprofen for a headache, and my headache doesn't go away, then I haven't received what I wanted. But if I take ibuprofen for a headache and my headache is removed, then I'm much more likely to take ibuprofen again the next time I have a headache. So something bad was removed, therefore that behavior is strengthened. Okay? And this is really what is used in animal training. They don't really work with punishment very much. If you think about places like SeaWorld and all that, it's kind of hard to punish a killer whale. So the only way that they can train something like that is through a series of reinforcements. Reinforcement is actually the preferred method of any type of behavior change too, even if you're working with children. Because what happens is the behavior is already occurring, and you're going to keep that momentum by reinforcing that behavior and keeping that behavior going through reinforcement. So that is a good thing. But we do punish. We punish in a lot of different aspects, relationships, as well as children, and sometimes even our pets. But what happens is if a behavior occurs and you punish it, you're going to be decreasing the likelihood of that behavior occurring again in the future. Now, you can punish the same way, two different ways. The mathematical terms, you can either add something or remove something, but they're going to be flipped because we're wanting to decrease the behavior instead of increase it. So when we want to decrease the behavior, we're going to add something undesirable or something bad to the scenario. That's where a child might get spanked. That's where if you're caught speeding and you get a ticket, that's a form of punishment. We can also punish by removing something good. A teenager that gets caught smoking that can't drive the car for 2 weeks, that's removing something desirable. That's grounding. That's a form of punishment. It's just a form of negative punishment because you're removing something desirable. Often a time out is considered negative punishment because if a child wants to interact, removing them from being able to interact or play with something is removing something good. So you can either add something, spanking, or something along that line, or you can remove something. Either way, adding or removing can be a form of punishment, just like adding or removing can be a form of reinforcement. It's just that we have to add something good, and that is determined by whoever is conducting the behavior. For example, if I add something good, such as $25 for every A that you make, if you don't really value $25, it's not really going to have a reinforcing effect. So it has to matter. A killer whale is not going to be interested in 25 bucks. However, if you throw him a fish, it's going to be reinforcing. If I throw you a fish because you make an A, it's not going to do you much good. So the organism that is providing the behavior has to determine whether or not this is good or bad. And that is the challenge for a lot of parents, to determine what is something desirable or undesirable to their children in order to know how to help modify their behavior. Something also to remember is that sometimes we end up punishing and reinforcing the wrong behaviors in life. A child who has a meltdown because they want a candy bar checking out of the grocery store, the behavior that's there is they're throwing a fit or a tantrum and having a meltdown because they want a candy bar. The best thing to do is to not give in what they want, maybe ignore them, etc. So you would be removing something good. You can remove the attention. You don't give in to that demand. However, unfortunately, sometimes the child throws a fit, and the longer they throw the fit, eventually the caregiver buys them the candy bar. And what they've just done is they have added something good to a tantrum. And the likelihood of a tantrum occurring again in the future when they really want a candy bar is higher. Sometimes we also punish something we don't intend to. So you finally get your significant other to help you clean the house, or to help you with laundry, or to fix dinner, something that you want a lot. And then once they do it, we start complaining and nagging because they didn't do it right or they forgot something. And that's actually a form of punishment. It's adding something bad. Not very many people want to be nagged or complained against. So, unfortunately, we've just decreased the likelihood of that behavior occurring again in the future. So, keep this in mind. I hope this helps in some way. Just ask yourself if it's any form of reinforcement, it's doing something to strengthen the behavior. Positive reinforcement strengthens, negative reinforcement strengthens. Positive punishment decreases, negative punishment decreases. Remember, positive and negative are only mathematical terms in this theory. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, I hope to see them on the discussion board. This is a very interesting topic, and if you really grasp it, it's something that you can use in your everyday life.